Welcome back to my studio. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the circle skirt for Briar Rose's costume, and we are also going to add pockets to this circle skirt, so let's get started. The materials needed for this costume are going to be 3 yards of fabric. I chose to use a cotton twill for this, and then also a 7 to 10 inch long zipper, and a tape measure, as well as many other things like your pins, needles, sewing machine, scissors, and everything else you would use for sewing. To make a circle skirt, you don't need a pattern, just some basic math and 2 very important measurements going into this process. You will need your waist measurement and the length from your waist to the hem of the skirt. I will link in the description below the calculator I use for my circle skirt, but I plug my numbers into the calculator and from there I get 4.14 inch radius for my waist and 32.14 inch radius for the length or the hem. And I'm actually going to round this up to 4 1/4 for the radius since I'll need a little wiggle room for the zipper, but we can talk about that once we start installing the zipper. Now, since my fabric is only 56 inches wide, I have to split my circle skirt up into 3 panels. A front panel that is half the circle, and 2 back panels that are a 1/4 circle each. Starting with the front panel, I'll mark my waist radius at the top corner on the fold. That's 4 1/4 inches. Then I will mark my hem radius, which is 32 1/4 inches radius, all from the same point at that top corner. I'm choosing to do this on a fold so that I have to do a little bit less marking and cutting. Once I have cut my front half skirt out, I will use that as a pattern piece to cut out the back 2 pieces. Now, to make my life easier when I go to sew this garment, I make sure to have as many seams along the selvage as I can. This means that my edge is already clean and finished, and I can just straight stitch it from there. Otherwise, I'd have to overcast the edge and create a clean seam that way. Once I have the first back piece cut out, I will rearrange my fabric again and cut out the second back piece using the front piece as a pattern. Now I should have a completed circle. Now, using the leftover fabric, I find a piece that is at least 30 inches long and I mark 30 inches by 4 inches to be my waistband. To get to the 30 inches, I just add 2 inches to my waist measurement, and then the 4 inches is because I want my waistband 1.5 inches wide, and 1.5 times 2 plus 1 for seam allowance. That equals 4. I also cut this on the selvage. Using the same scrap piece, I start developing the pocket by pulling out my phone and drawing around it. I place the opening on the straight side of the piece. Please ensure that you make this straight piece long enough so that you can easily fit your hand in the pocket. Then I cut my marked piece out and use that pattern to cut out 2 more pieces of fabric. There should be 4 total pocket cuts of fabric. In order to have a fully finished skirt on the inside, I need to overcast stitch over my pocket pieces and the back pieces of my skirt. The overcast stitch will stitch over the exposed fabric edge and hold in the fibers to keep the pieces from fraying and making a mess. I normally use my serger for this, but with the Janome HD3000, it's much faster to just switch to this stitch and then switch back to my straight stitch. Once I am done overcasting my pocket and back pieces, I will press the waistband and fold it in half and then press it on the exposed edge and leave the selvage edge be. Then I will press the pocket pieces to get them ready to be attached to the skirt. To attach the pockets to the skirt, I start by measuring 3 inches from the top of the front skirt panel. This is just my personal preference, however, they can be lower if you would like them to. So I line the top of my pocket piece up with the 3-inch mark, and with the right sides together, I will pin the pocket to the skirt panel. I will then do this on the other side of the front skirt panel and set that aside. With the 2 back panels, I make sure that I have the correct edge, and to determine that, I look to see what edge is the selvage, since I cut my pieces on the selvage. I'm able to quickly figure out which piece gets sewn where. You can also solve this problem by marking the center back line if that's easier for you. So, like on the front piece, I will mark 3 inches from the top, line my pocket piece up with that marking, and then I will pin it in place with the right sides together, and I will do that on both sides. Once all the pockets are pinned to the skirt panels, I will sew them down with a 2.5 millimeter stitch length on a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I can press my pocket pieces and then pin the back pieces to the front, pinning around the pocket piece and making sure not to pin through the pocket opening. Then I will repeat on the other side, keeping in mind not to pin through my pocket opening. I will sew these pieces together, pausing at the corners where my pockets are and stitching backward and then forward over the corners of the pockets to reinforce them. Now it's time to attach the waistband. The side of the waistband that is not folded in will get pinned to the top of the skirt with the right sides of the fabric facing the right side of the skirt fabric. There should still be an entire skirt seam that is not stitched together yet. I find it easiest to do this by marking the center and pinning there, and then working my way to the edges from the center. Once the waistband is pinned, I will stitch it down a little less than a 1/2 inch seam allowance with a 2.5 millimeter straight stitch. Once that is sewn, I will fold the waistband over and pin the waistband on the inside with the folded piece enclosing the first edge of the waistband that's attached to the top of the skirt. Then I will sew that down with a 2.5 millimeter straight stitch. Let's move on to the back seam. With my zipper handy, I will place it on the back panel to mark where it will end on my seam from the top. This marking will denote me to stop stitching when I go to stitch this seam up. I will pin this seam from the bottom to this marking and then take it to my machine and sew it. Now it's time to install the zipper. I have an entire video on installing zippers that I will link below, but I will briefly go over how to do it in this video too. So, starting with my back pieces together, I am going to baste stitch the 2 pieces where the zipper will go. Then I will press this entire seam open, including the spot where the zipper will go. From the wrong side of the skirt, I'm going to pin the zipper onto the seam, making sure that my pin placement is easy to take out as I sew the zipper down. It's important for this step to also make sure to replace the sewing foot with the zipper foot and to have the foot on the correct side of the zipper. I choose to have it to the left of the zipper, but it's completely sewist's choice. Starting below the zipper pole, I will sew a straight stitch slowly going over the zipper and the fabric. Once I reach the edge of the zipper, I will drop the needle into the zipper and pivot the seam so I can stitch across the bottom of the zipper. From there, I will pivot again and stitch up the opposite side of the zipper, ending before I reach the zipper pole. Now I'm going to seam rip the basting stitch that I added before the zipper, pin the top of the zipper from the right side of the skirt, drop the zipper pole, and then stitch the top of the zipper down. The last thing to do is sew up the hem. There are several ways to do this. I am going to start by marking 1/2 of an inch and then 2 inches all the way around the circumference of the skirt from the bottom of this skirt. Then I will fold the 1/2 of an inch up and press and pin it in place. From there, I'll take my hem over to my machine and baste the hem down. Finally, I will bring it back to my table, fold it so that the bottom meets the 2-inch mark, press and pin that, then I will sew it down by machine. Once it has been sewn down by machine, I will run my iron over it one last time to really set the stitches in the skirt, and then we have a finished skirt. And it is done. That is it. Here's the finished skirt. I will make sure to get some finished footage from my photo shoot on Friday. Eva is sulking right there. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed this Briar Rose making of series. I hope to do more Disney breakdowns in the future, and until next time, happy sewing!